Bowen said at the press conference that offshore wind farms are a key measure of the 82% renewable plan and that Australia is, quote, way behind the rest of the world in producing wind off our coastline. No shortage of it at press conferences though. He said he was inviting submissions for the first project off Gippsland, Victoria, which could provide 20% of Victoria's energy needs and create 3,000 to 8,000 jobs a year. He went on, quote, I want to bring communities with us on this important journey. There will be valid concerns. There will be issues that will need to be worked through with communities, unquote. What? Like whether the people of Gippsland want these monstrous eyesores at all? Why didn't you ask these communities about their valid concerns during the election campaign 2 months ago, Chris? This is a perfect example of why Australians are so cynical about politics these days. This decision was made either before the election and deliberately avoided during the campaign, or it has been quickly adopted since the election because Labor needs to explain how it's going to force us into 82% renewables by 2030. Bowen went on, referring to the areas where windmills will be installed, quote, these are areas undergoing economic change as our energy system transforms. These are areas that are undergoing very significant job changes and economic change, and offshore wind will create a lot of jobs. What if some people in these areas liked the jobs they had already, Chris? Shouldn't you have put that option to them at the election? Robert Gottliebsen, the journalist for The Australian, 2 weeks ago wrote that there was an untapped natural gas deposit onshore from where these wind farms are that is arguably more valuable and easier to convert into electricity. It was discovered in 2014 and contains the equivalent of 60% of all the gas extracted from the Bass Strait over the past 50 years. That's a lot of gas. Its presence has been ignored by the last 2 Victorian state governments and, of course, every federal government over the past 8 years. It would easily provide the sort of clean, reliable and cheap energy that once powered Australia's thriving economy and manufacturing industries. But we are being repeatedly told that we need to transition to renewables instead, and we need to do it fast. The reason for this has never been fully explained. Politicians simply assume we agree with them that if we continue to use coal and gas, life on Earth will somehow cease to exist. Like many people, I'm a little sceptical about this. But nevertheless, the people of Gippsland are now being told they will undergo, to quote Bowen, significant job changes. By this, does he mean some of them will lose their jobs? And as for the companies that tender for these wind farm licences, is the government going to offer them subsidies? In his book on charlatans, Bowen says, quote, climate deniers have convinced some people that tackling climate change will cost them their jobs and livelihoods, unquote. Well, perhaps he'd like to publish a new edition of the book explaining why the true charlatans are not the people like him who want to force us into expensive, subsidised, unreliable, renewable energy while ignoring the cheaper, more reliable coal, gas and nuclear that we already have in abundant supply.